So this is India Simmons interviewing Miss Jacqueline Lowrey on March 5th, 2019 in the Texana room. So Miss Lowrey, why don't you start off by telling us when and where were you born?
Okay, I was born in Chicago, Illinois, June 11th, 1992, but I moved to Dallas when I was 4, so in 96.
Okay, and what was your neighborhood like, I guess, in Dallas then?
So I grew up in Richardson, but the corner of Richardson, Plano, Murphy. And I remember we were the only house on the block, and we were the only black family on the block for quite a few years. I'd say probably 5 or 6 years.
Okay. And will you tell us a bit more about your family?
So I'm the youngest. I have 2 older sisters. One's 30 and one's 40, so we have a big gap, but we're really, really close. And both of my parents are retired. They grew up in Chicago. My sisters practically grew up in Chicago. Everyone's there. So I'm the only Texan. But yeah, I had a really great childhood, and my parents were just always super involved and always pushed us to do whatever we needed to do. That was one of the reasons we even moved down to Texas.
So growing up in Richardson, what did a normal day at home look like for you?
Like when I was a kid?
Yeah, middle school, elementary school.
Okay. So at elementary school, I lived like maybe a 10-minute walk away. So I was walking to school by myself like when I was 6 or 7, to be honest. But I always listened to music on the way there, and even now to this day, I can't really be in silence. Every time I'm going somewhere, I have to have headphones in. But I was also very active, especially in middle school and high school. I was in the band. So in the fall, I was in marching. There's marching season. And then every other part of the year was concert season. And when I think back on it, especially high school, that's all I did. I probably practiced a good 3-4 hours a day. And I was really, really passionate about music. So when I think of my childhood, it's really just revolves around music. How I think about it.
Nice. And how would you describe race relations growing up?
That's a good question. So it's really interesting because I've been thinking about this too. I knew that we were the only black family on the block, but that didn't really mean anything to me. Growing up, my parents were really big about us knowing our history. So we read a lot of books about slavery, about Reconstruction, up to the Civil Rights Movement. And I remember being 6 or 7 and first learning about the Klan. Oh my gosh, it messed me up. It gave me so many nightmares. But they focused more on recognizing our history more than anything. When I was in school, in elementary school, wasn't a big deal at all. Everyone kind of played together. In middle school, I think that's when I started noticing that it's a bit different. So the middle school I went to was just opened in 2003, and I was the first class that went there. And it was predominantly white, very small population of Black and Latino kids. And it wasn't until my 7th and 8th grade year I was in track. And that was really the first time I was around more people of color. In my classes, I wasn't really, but when I joined track, it was really great. And then I get to high school, and our team works with the senior high school. So our 9-10 was a different school than 11-12. And as soon as I joined that track team, that's when I realized I was different, but not in a way that I thought. There were a lot of girls who kind of assumed because I was lighter skinned that I couldn't do certain things. But then they found out I was a sprinter, and then all of a sudden I was cool again, which, yeah, it's another story in itself. But I was just happy to have some Black friends. Like, it was a bit difficult to have those growing up. And then I got injured and couldn't do track anymore. And to fill the time, I joined debate. And then that was 10th grade. 10th grade on, I was barely in any contact with people of color. And that says more about the school I went to rather than kind of me seeking out friends. So especially since I was in debate and I was in band, I was really in those corners of the school. And a lot of the friends I had growing up, we just didn't see each other. And I remember my senior year, I was on a band trip, and one of my friends was just friend with one of my childhood friends. And she told me that they were telling her that they thought that I thought I was better now, that I was stuck up. And I was so surprised because I hadn't talked to that childhood friend in a couple years. And the fact that she was talking about me that way it hurt me, but I also kind of wasn't surprised, so it's really interesting when I think about race relations growing up, because you'd think it'd be a lot of kind of black and white conflict, and that's never been the case for me. All of my racial conflict has been within the Black community, which is very confusing for me because I'm very, very proud to be a Black woman, but just pretty much my entire life it's just been kind of a battle within the community. And that's something I'm still grappling with today, and just trying to figure out how that works. So,
how else would you describe high school life for you?
So again, all I did was band. And I was pretty good. I was really, really dedicated to it. But I was also really competitive. So of course, I did my schoolwork. I did really well in school. My priority was all region and all area, all state competitions. And so that became a bit stressful after a while. But I think the experience that I think kind of soured it for me, I had this one band director, and he was, and it matters, he was a Black man. And I remember when I was in 8th grade, whenever he would come to the middle school, he would kind of scout out just the young musicians. And he was really great, really nice, wanted to kind of work with me to get better. And as soon as I entered high school, one of my best friends was also in the band with me. And it was obvious that he preferred her, but it wasn't a big deal until we were just playing in class one day, and I think I was first chair and I messed up a solo, and he stopped the band, scoffed at me, and then gave the solo to my friend. It was humiliating, completely humiliating. But he was a good band director, so I tried to just kind of brush it off. And that was 10th grade. But that always just kind of messed me up. And then I went to the senior high. It's common for you to go back to just another band director just to play some of your audition pieces, just to get a second opinion. And I went to him because I know he is a good band director. And again, this is a year after I left that high school. And he basically told me that he doesn't understand why I'm still playing music. It was just nitpicking every little thing I did and didn't give me any constructive feedback at all. And it was basically an hour of being told that I wasn't good enough. And I remember going home and just being in tears the entire time. And that was a really rough time for me too, because that's all I did in high school. I literally didn't have anything else but playing my instrument. And it was funny because I actually did the best out of my 4 years during that time, but it did such a blow to my confidence. And I think that's part of the reason I didn't pursue it in college, because it started to affect my mental health too. Because especially when you're doing something where it's really based on ability, I feel like it's similar with athletes too. If you feel like you can't kind of perform at your full potential, then maybe you shouldn't even be doing it at all. And I feel like educators like that band director kind of reinforce that toxic thought. And now that I think about it, that's what really characterized my high school experience, which is sad. I had a lot of great moments, but that's always just been something that's really stuck with me.
I see. Mm-hmm. What were some of the dreams you held as a child?
It's a good question. Well, of course, to be a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really think that's mostly what I can think of when I was a lot younger, whenever I joined debate is when I realized that I was really passionate about politics. So I was like 15, 16.
Okay.
And the more I did that, I realized I was particularly interested in foreign policy. And then after that, I just wanted to be Secretary of State. So it kind of jumped. But yeah, I wanted to do something where I could travel, anything involving diplomacy. And to be honest, just anything outside of the country just seemed a lot more appealing to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess those are my dreams.
Okay.
It feels so long ago. It really wasn't that long ago. But that's the first thing that comes to my head.
Okay. And so what led you to SMU?
So when I was 6 or 7, I was in the Nutcracker. And we performed at McFarland Auditorium. And I just thought the campus was so beautiful, the auditorium was so beautiful, and I just always told my mom that I'm going to come here when I go to college. So it just kind of, I don't know, like it always just had a nice, it was just a nice idea that I had since I was little. And then come senior high, I just started exploring SMU a bit more. And I noticed the lack of diversity. I really did. And to be honest, I mostly wanted to come here because of the music program. So more than anything, that was the real reason. It was either between SMU or TCU, but I didn't get into the program here, but I did at TCU. And I remember when I got my acceptance letter to SMU, the first thing I said was, "Ma, I don't know, that school's too white." And she was so mad at me. She was so mad at me because she said, like, this is an opportunity a lot of people aren't able to get, and so you should be proud that you got into this institution. And I was like, okay. Like, of course, like, I knew it was a great institution, but I mean, it was true. There wasn't a lot of diversity. And even though I grew up in an environment that was predominantly white, it wasn't necessarily the affluent white community, which is quite different, I realized. And then I remember even going on a tour and I saw the tanning pool. and that was one of the selling points of the tour, and I just laughed. I was like, I'm not gonna be using no tanning pool. So yeah, most of it was music. And then, because I was gonna double major in music and political science. And so when that didn't work out here, I thought the poli-sci department just was better here. And so that's ultimately why I came.
Okay. And so at the time, did SMU have any sort of reputation amongst the African American community?
Well, since I really wasn't necessarily like active in the African American community, I can't really say generally. In my family, yes. And just in my school, even just within everyone, like no matter what color they were, hearing SMU was like, oh, that's a rich school, you know? So that was more of the reputation. Nothing like, oh, it's a racist school, or, oh, people aren't happy there. It was just known as the rich school more than anything.
I see. And what were your expectations coming into SMU?
I had zero expectations. I know that sounds awful. I had zero expectations. I was just happy to be in college, you know. And I was close to home, which was, which I think kind of helped. But I didn't have any expectations. I didn't think it was going to be bad or amazing, but I was just ready for, I guess, that chapter in my life. So
I understand.
Yeah.
How welcoming was the school when you first arrived?
You know what, it was welcoming. I remember, I think it was a preview day, and the students had their own little program and the parents had another program. And the group I was in wasn't really diverse, but everyone was still super friendly. It was a really good preview day. I really enjoyed it. The one thing that did stick out to me though, all the different kind of student orgs were kind of introducing themselves. And there was a reception specifically for the multicultural students, and at the time it was called SAMHSA. And I remember going in there and like, I don't know if she was the director, but kind of the head person of SAMHSA. The first thing she said was, "We want you to know that there's a place for you here on this campus." And I feel like some people were relieved. The first thing I thought was, it's just this room? This is the only room on campus that's for us? So that was a bit of a red flag for me, and I understood. I understood what she meant, but that's just something that I always remember, just kind of kept in the back of my mind. I was like, huh, that's weird. And I just went about my day. So yeah, my initial kind of just introduction to campus life was overall really positive.
Okay.
Yeah.
And during your time here, did you live on campus?
The first 2 years I did.
Okay. Roommates?
Yes. Yeah, and I did have a good experience with roommates. I roomed with the same girl for 2 years. And it's always funny. Freshman year, we're best friends. It's when you get to sophomore year, and then you just start meeting other people, we kind of grew apart, but not in a bad way or anything. But I was ready to not live on campus and not live with her anymore, to be honest. But yeah, I think that's just kind of natural in school.
And were you involved in any clubs or organizations?
So, yeah, the main one was Sigma Lambda Gamma sorority.
Right.
Yeah, and I was very, very active in chapter. I joined my first semester sophomore year. And I did not think I was going to be in Greek life. I could care less. And I mean, I was aware of the Greek life kind of culture at SMU, and I was just completely repelled by it. But a lot of my friends really just happened to be in this organization. And just the more that I learned about it, the more I realized, oh, we think the same. I agree with the values. And then like to this day, I'm still best friends with a lot of my sisters. So I spent most of my time doing that. It's not necessarily an organization, but my junior and senior year, I was a student leader for the Civil Rights Pilgrimage. And so that was great. And I was very, very honored to be picked by Dr. Dennis Simon, because he was just one of the professors that, I was never necessarily close to professors, but I don't know, he always kind of quietly supported me, and I hadn't had a professor like that. So that was really, really meaningful for me. And yeah, that's really the two main things I was involved in.
Now, the Civil Rights Pilgrimage, was that taking for political science?
Yes. I think at the time, it was just a human rights minor, so I don't think it was required yet. But I went during sophomore year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how would you describe your social life like?
I mean, I hung out with mostly my sisters, to be honest, which was really great. Like we had a good time. It was a good mix of being social, being studious. It was really great kind of group of women to be around, because we were also very, very ambitious. And so there are a lot of older sisters that I have that even now I still look up to, and they're still my mentors. So I feel like my social life was a mix of regular college life, but mostly just really kind of surrounding myself around people that inspired me and kind of pushed me to do things. So apparently my social life had a purpose. I could have had more fun, I'm assuming, but I enjoyed it at least.
Very nice.
Yeah.
How would you describe the culture at the time for student life?
So, and it's so funny, I tell some of the younger kids whenever like we're in Houston, where SAMHSA was, I don't know what it's called now, but it's that big space kind of when you're upstairs to the right. Without a doubt, the Latino kids were on the couches in front of that building, in front of that room. Black kids were in front of the TV. The Asian students were at the desk studying. My entire 4 years here, that was just where everyone knew where to go. And again, I thought that was weird, but I guess that's just the culture here. So I mean, that was fine. But the older I got, I was in classes, I guess, with a wider variety of students. Of course, Greek life really dominated the campus. But one of my favorite things that we did was the homecoming step show. And the NPHC orgs were basically leading other Greek organizations, just doing a performance, 10-minute performance. And it was so much fun and awesome. And I remember when I did it, we were matched with Theta and Chi-O. And I had never talked to anybody just in Pan-Hellenic. Not because I didn't want to, our paths just never crossed. And I remember when we first started, there were a lot of girls that were going to do it. By the end of it, it was just one Chi-O and three Theta girls and about 8 Gammas. And we were matched up with Omega Psi-Phi. It was so much fun. And during this performance, just every type of person was there, which was really great. But then after that performance, no one talked to each other again. So I always thought that was interesting. I know now they don't do the step show anymore. But I always thought it was something beneficial. But overall, especially when I was a senior, I realized just everyone stays in their own little corner. They really do. And I know with Gammas, we would have kind of like stroll around the flagpole type of things. And some people would pass by and would ask what was going on. They thought it was cool. Other people would kind of just gawk at us and just kind of sit and stare or point or laugh. And that's actually when I stopped strolling in public, because after a while, and it happened during homecoming too, after a while, it feels like a performance for other people. And that's kind of how I remember the culture. When I was here, there was no type of integration going on. And whenever we tried to, it just didn't work. It kind of felt like the students of color were overcompensating to convince white students that we're literally we're just like you. But also at the same time, I know the university was pushing for kind of more diversity in general, and there were a lot of pushback to that too. And yeah, so it was a bit of a mess. And I think because it was a bit of a mess, everyone stayed in their corners, because I think that's where we felt safe. Yeah.
Can you walk me through a typical day as a student here?
It really was just standard. Now that I think about it, I avoided all 8 a.m.s. So the earliest I had class was 9. And this was whenever I was on campus. I'd always go to the dining hall with my friends, go to class around lunch, sat outside SAMHSA with my friends, because most of my friends just happened to be Hispanic. Go to class, study. I guess I had a pretty boring college life, which isn't bad. Like I came here to get an education. I had my friends, so yeah, it was pretty standard.
So what would you say was your most memorable experience here?
Most memorable. One that comes to mind, when I was a junior, I was kind of the main person that recruited girls to our sorority. And we had kind of like this presentation at the end of it where we introduce our new members. And it's a pretty kind of hefty leadership role to have. And I was super nervous. And we were in the auditorium, the Hughes Trigg auditorium. And I remember whenever I went on stage, like every seat was filled, and it wasn't just people of color, which is usually the case when we go to these presentations. And it was just so awesome, just seeing lots of different types of people. Everyone was super engaged during the performance. Everyone was like just standing and singing and dancing. So that was really, really awesome. And I think that's what kind of made me really fall in love with my sorority, is because that's just the culture of our group. And I think we're able to kind of bring a lot of people together just because the organization had a lot of different kinds of people in it. So I did value seeing the campus come together more because that didn't happen often. So whenever it did, we were like, oh, this is cool. Because since we didn't see it that often.
And so your friend group was your sorority sisters?
Predominantly.
And was that a mix of Black, Latinx, or how did your friend group look exactly?
When I first started at SMU, it was mostly Latina. And it's just kind of how it happened. I didn't necessarily try to seek a certain group. I mean, I won't lie, I did try to seek out, like going to ABS, going to SSS. Wasn't super welcomed, so I went where I was welcome. And that's just being completely candid. But in the sorority, especially after I crossed, because I think me and one of my LSs were the first Black Gammas on campus. And we've been on campus since '95, so that was a big deal. And we had one white sister. I had a line of 11, so there was lots of different, different kinds of us. But yeah, after that, we just had a lot more just diversity within the org. We were the most diverse just out of all of MGC. And I just thought that was so great, you know, because it was more of like a lot of different types of women were attracted to this group. It's not like we tried to pick out certain people to fill any type of quota. So yeah, it was just around lots of different types of women with different experiences.
Would you like to go into more detail about why you felt as though you weren't welcomed by ABS or orgs like that?
So something I've always really struggled with, I mean, and it's very real, is colorism within the Black community. I mean, I grew up with it. My dad is darker skinned, my mom is lighter skinned. My dad's mom, my grandma, did not like my mom's side of the family and was very vocal because she was light skinned. And so growing up, I knew that was there, but didn't really think much of it. Then in high school, I really noticed it. And so after a while, I wanted to stop being bullied, you know, because I was only bullied by Black girls growing up, like threatening to cut my hair or beat me up for no reason. And back then, I actually thought they were going to. Now I know it was all just a bunch of BS. So I come into SMU with that mindset. So part of it is probably just me, just given how I was growing up. But since I knew how white the campus was, I mean, naturally, I kind of just wanted to hang out with more people of color. But I always felt so awkward when I went to those events. So awkward. And after a while, and I'm a pretty quiet person, and I can see how it comes across like like I don't want to be there, I don't want to engage. Like I'm aware that that's how I come across sometimes, but I'm mostly just shy. That's just how I am. And so I think maybe I inadvertently gave off a bad impression. I'm not sure. So that was always odd. And then I was looking at joining an NPHC organization and was trying to get to know more girls through that. And it was the same thing that I had back in high school. It was a lot of talking down. I had to prove myself to show them that I'm worthy of being in their org. And I just didn't care enough. You know, I really didn't care enough. And I think, and I still remember it now, I was a freshman and I was in this beauty pageant that Omega Sci-Fi had. It was so much fun. That's actually where I met most of my sisters. And it was like a scholarship thing too. And I got first runner up and I was so excited. I think I got like $200. I thought that was so cool. And I remember being in SAMHSA and I was talking to a couple of guys from the frat there. And this girl made this comment that insinuated that I was hooking up with one of them. And I could not believe it. I was so embarrassed. I mean, I was a freshman. I was 18 at the time. And it was just completely unnecessary. and I just didn't want to be, I just didn't want to really be around them anymore. And it was interesting, it was never with black men on campus at all. It was only with black women on campus. So again, that was really confusing to me.
I see.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you ended up majoring in political science, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Political science, human rights, and Spanish.
Human rights, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so within those departments, how did race relations manifest themselves, if they did at all?
Oh yeah, it did. It did. Political science, I was always the only black person, if not one of two, in class. I've never really been super talkative in class. It's just me. And again, I didn't have any issues with students. And this is kind of a general theme of being at SMU. No one ever necessarily disrespected me overtly. They just ignored me. I think that's one of the main issues. It's acting like a certain population just doesn't exist on campus. And so I felt like I kind of blended in the woodwork, specifically in political science. And also there happened to be a lot of more conservative students, and I'm not conservative at all. And I know one thing that really stuck out to me, and I tell people because it just makes me laugh. There's one upper level class I was in, and we were talking about multiculturalism. And one of the lessons was about, gosh, I forget the term, but basically kind of like teaching black kids in Oakland a different way to speak because their parents weren't educated at home. So basically teaching them a language of slang in the classroom so they can communicate with their parents. And I forget the name. I thought it was ridiculous. And I just remember one kid raising his hand and has a really passionate argument of why that should be in schools, because kids should be able to communicate with their parents. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I just couldn't believe it. And that was the first time I spoke in that class too. It wasn't ignorant in like a disrespectful type of way. It was, this guy, he genuinely thought that was a good idea. Genuinely, and I couldn't believe it. And he was a really smart kid. He was always participating in class. Like, I had lots of insightful things to say, and I just could not believe it. So yeah, it was mostly just a lot of students seemed to be kind of in the dark about a lot of any type of multicultural happenings. Of course, in human rights, that wasn't an issue, to be honest. Spanish wasn't an issue either. Yeah, it mostly stood out with political science, and I'll be honest, if I had known the general culture of the school and the department, I would have gone somewhere else.
I see.
Yeah.
And how were your experiences like within the Spanish department and the human rights department?
It was always great. Yeah, I'm trying to think with the human rights classes. Just that major just opened lots of doors for me. I remember the first time I was a student leader for the pilgrimage in particular, everyone liked each other. It was so great. Like, there was maybe 50 people on that trip.
Wow.
And everyone was just having a good time. Like, it was amazing. Excuse me. And then the second time I went on the trip, everyone, they didn't hate each other. But what was interesting about that trip was there were a lot of LGBT students on it. And of course, with civil rights, it's not just Black history, it's American history. Like, it paved the way for a lot of activism in different civil rights areas. However, whenever we were in Selma, there was a commemorative march from Selma to Montgomery, and we were on the march, and someone from the public, we didn't know who they were, just started just yelling homophobic slurs. And of course, it was very disappointing for everyone, but what was interesting, because we would have reflections during this trip, where a lot of those students started kind of attacking the purpose of this trip and saying that it was just focusing on the African American experience, and they didn't feel like their experience was being represented enough. And there was a divide with students, and the way I saw it was that there was kind of like a hierarchy of oppression. And I can see that happening in the human rights community because I feel like everyone has their niche, you know? And especially when you're talking about marginalized communities, everyone's gonna think someone had it worse. You're gonna think you had it worse, you know? And I think unfortunately what happened on that trip was students didn't feel like they were being recognized enough, and instead they just kind of wanted to break off. And I didn't know what to do in that situation. I was just 21.
Yeah.
What I ended up doing was traveling around to different groups and hearing them out. And I could tell that they trusted me a lot more after that, because I mean, I just wanted to learn what was going on, you know. And I really think at the end of the day, people just want to be heard, you know. They want to be recognized and listened to, and that's not asking for much, you know. So and that's just something that's always stuck with me. So whenever I disagree with someone, or if I don't understand, I always ask them what they mean, and it's from a genuine place.
Right.
They don't need to defend themselves, if anything. So yeah.
Did you have any mentors during your time here?
No, I didn't. And a lot of that's just because I didn't seek them out. I didn't know I needed to at all. I kind of just thought, well, and I was also under the impression that I needed to wait until someone saw something in me, kind of in order to reach out. I mean, that's how I joined the debate team. That's how I joined band. That's how I became the student leader for the pilgrimage. I always felt like someone kind of had to validate, kind of validate me doing certain things, which of course worked against me at the end of the day. But I guess the closest mentorship I had, just like I mentioned with my sorority sisters, especially the older ones, just because they were just really sure of themselves and had goals and were genuine about helping everyone. So I think those were the closest mentors I had.
Okay.
Yeah.
Overall, how well did you feel that the Black community was represented at SMU?
To be honest, I don't know, because I felt like I wasn't part of that community. The most I saw was with the NPHC orgs, especially like during the like homecoming step show type of events, because that had been going on for a few years whenever I was here. So I think a lot of people recognize those orgs, but in regards to a general Black community, I don't know, I wasn't a part of it.
Okay. And would you say that had any sort of effect on you?
Yeah, it really did, because I mean, there's not necessarily like a singular Black experience. There's lots of different experiences of Black people. And I think I wanted to be a part of that community because there are similarities. You know, we may not have the same experience, but we have similar context, you know, of how we grew up. And I just didn't have that. And that always just really bothered me too. And I mean, I've been told loads of times that I'm not Black enough. And now, again, that is just ridiculous. But back then, I mean, I've always thought that my entire life. And so hearing it in college, I'm like, oh, well, maybe that's just it. And also, I got a lot of crap for joining a Latina-based sorority. A lot of crap about that, which was just also really dumb to me, because it's not like I was friends with anyone in the Black community to have an opinion. So yeah, just I had a similar experience to what I've had growing up.
Okay. And overall, as a Black woman, how well did you feel that you were treated by other students and faculty members?
I feel like I was treated well. There wasn't any time I felt uncomfortable. There was one time I was enrolled in a Southern politics class, and the teacher was a visiting lecturer. from Clemson. And I was one of 2 black kids in the class. Everyone else was white. And he just very actively dismissed me. I've noticed, I remember we were doing we had to choose a book for a book report. There's only one book on civil rights movement.
Wow.
One book, and it was a list of 30 books in a Southern politics class. So naturally, I chose that book, you know. And he was just really dismissive about it. I felt so uncomfortable that I ended up withdrawing from the class. And I told Dr. Simon back at political science that he should not be teaching here, because I shouldn't have to withdraw from a class because I don't think you're going to treat me fair or grade me fair. And it didn't help that he was extra Southern, you know. So that was really the only instance where I felt uncomfortable. But other than that, no, everything was really good.
Okay. And I understand you did a bit of studying abroad. Would you like to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, it's so funny. I did SMU in Oxford summer before my senior year. And I was so scared. I knew no one on the trip. A lot of kids on the trip were in the honors program, President Scholars, Hunt Scholars. I wasn't any of that. There were a lot of Greek students as well. A lot of affluent students, wasn't a part of that group. There were 5 people of color on that trip, I think 60 students total.
Wow.
And we all lumped together, naturally. I mean, the 4 of them were all President Scholars. And I wasn't. And you know what, that wasn't a big deal. At first, I thought it was a big deal. But that's really the makeup of the trip. And also, I did not have money to go on that trip. And so I had to fundraise. I had a GoFundMe account. I wrote a letter to all the black faculty and staff I knew at SMU asking if they could help me raise money for it. And I ended up getting it all covered.
Wow.
But that was a humbling experience, because essentially I was begging for money to go on this trip. And I knew that wasn't something anyone else on that trip had to do. And so I didn't tell people either. So that was tough. I had to get out of my comfort zone. But whenever I went on the trip, the first week was awful just because I didn't know anyone. And there was a clear divide between the students of color and the rest of the students. I mean, it was super obvious. But I mean, as the weeks progressed, we started getting better, which was great. I think my favorite experience, I think it was maybe like a week or 2 before it was over, some of the students from Panhellenic and IFC asked me to go out with them to get a drink. I thought they were joking at first, because we're just different. We don't hang out. And it was to the point where whenever I was meeting them, I thought they weren't going to show up. And so I was surprised that they were there. And we go to this pub, and it was so interesting because it felt awkward, but not for me. It felt like for them. They didn't know what to talk about. And it was so interesting. And one of the guys, he was telling a story, and he said the N-word. He said the N-word, and everyone just kind of gasped and got quiet, and I just busted out laughing because I'm like, wow, this is just how y'all talk? So I thought it was funny. I wasn't offended. And then he offered to buy me a drink, and we just went out the bar, and he was like, I'm really sorry that I said that, but whenever we say it, we mean it as friends. Stuff like that. And then I remember we went dancing afterwards, and it was hip hop music, and everyone was joking how, oh, I'm white, I can't dance like this, blah, 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 blah. It was a surreal experience. It was super surreal. But yeah, the rest of the trip, we were just best friends. It was great. As soon as we came back to SMU, no one knew each other at all. And I think that's what got me, because we spent 5 weeks together, all eating together, doing just the regular stuff together. Yeah, and as soon as we got back to SMU, it was nothing. But I will say when I was abroad, I did make a lot of friends with locals because I couldn't hang out with kids in the program, so I hung out with, because there was a student leader as well from Oxford, and so I hung out with him and his friends, to be honest. But that was great because then I realized how much I really liked being over there, and tried to build like a little network then. So, I mean, it was an amazing experience, but I mean, it was challenging. It wasn't just kind of roses the entire time. I know that's what my parents think. It was just one vacation, and it wasn't a vacation, but yeah, it was great. Opened a lot of doors for me.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And I also understand you did a semester in DC as well, correct?
Yeah. That was amazing. Oh my goodness. It was also a bit scary too, because the program was 2 days for an internship, 3 days for class. We had to find our own internship. So we had to send in resumes, had to have interviews, all this stuff. We had to go around the city to go to these agencies for interviews. And that was crazy for me. But it was also really an experience. And I was part of the Middle East politics cohort. There was like 8 of us. We were the smallest cohort in the program. And I didn't realize I was passionate about just Middle East studies until maybe the summer before senior year. So I was a bit behind. And everyone in that cohort had been studying the Middle East since freshman year. Like, they knew a lot of stuff. They knew what they wanted to do. And I was like, oh no, I don't know what I want to do with this yet. I just know that I'm interested. So I felt like I had a learning curve. But everyone was just really, really great. We got to visit lots of amazing places, which was great. We got to go to different embassies. My favorite was when we visited the Egyptian embassy, and it was 2013. And there was a regime change in the middle of it. And I remember a student was asking their opinion about it, and they shut that down real quick. It was drama filled. It was great. Yeah, that was so much fun. And also I had a German roommate, and we just became best friends. But I remember whenever I got her name, because it was kind of a blind matching, me and my family were like, I hope she knows I'm black. I know, which is an awful thing to think about, but you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, some people are bothered by that. But we became best friends. We did everything together. And the whole reason I decided to go to grad school abroad was because of her.
I see.
We just talked about it one night, and I was like, maybe I could do something like that. So yeah, DC was awesome. Yeah.
And how did you feel about graduation?
I felt great about it, because at that time, I had applied to grad school. I got into all of the programs, and it was just a matter of figuring out where I was going to go. But I won't lie, I was ready to leave SMU. I was ready to leave Texas.
Yeah.
I'll be completely honest, especially after being abroad and being in DC. I was just around lots of different, just students from different backgrounds, like hearing different languages all the time. I loved it. That was great. And so when I came back to Texas, I was like, yeah, I can only give you a semester. I was definitely ready to go. But I was also really proud, though, just going to my graduation ceremonies, just because my parents went to school. It was just a bit different back then. It was in the late 60s, and my dad was an athlete, and my mom did, I think, special education. But their experiences were just very different. So me and my sisters graduating was a really, really big deal. And my grandmas came down, and they were in their late 70s, early 80s. So it was really cool for them to see this, because I knew that it meant a lot to them. It meant a lot to me too, but specifically just for my family. This was kind of like a family achievement. So that day was great. Excuse me, but I was ready to peace out.
And overall, as you reflect back on your time at SMU, how do you feel about it?
The way I describe it is that I got an amazing education. And that's the whole reason I went to school. I had a great education. I connected with really great faculty. I met some of my best friends here. But socially, I think I could have had a better experience if I felt comfortable on campus. I didn't. I think that's the reason I spent so much time studying, because what else was I going to do? You know, like I never partied. I mean, loads of kids, of course, had fake IDs. I was too scared to do that. But yeah, just socially, I just never felt comfortable on campus. And whenever I went to grad school in England, my program was a year, and I felt more comfortable in that 1 year than I did my entire 4 years here. And I think what's unfortunate is this is obviously a great institution, you know, but I feel like I shouldn't be saying that. Mm-hmm. There was 4 years to feel comfortable and welcomed on this campus, and it just didn't happen, you know? And so there's a bit of resentment, but at the same time, like, I'm not gonna complain, because, I mean, having this education has opened doors. So I have mixed feelings overall, but I also work here now, and I'm really, really happy to be here and work with students. So I guess bittersweet, good and bad.
Now, before we move into your current work, why don't you lead us through your year abroad in England?
Okay. So I did my master's in international relations in the Middle East at Durham University, and so that's like right outside of Newcastle up in northeast England. It was terrifying. I had never been to the campus before. First time I was flying by myself overseas. I was sad because I was leaving my family. I knew I couldn't go home often. And so, yeah, I went over there, and there was a big bus, a charter bus that picked up students and then dropped us off in Durham. And it was very hilly in the countryside, lots of trees, lots of cobblestone streets. And I was like, where am I? This is crazy. And then when I got to my room and there was nothing in it and it was a bit small, I had a mini panic attack. Because I was like, what did I get myself into? Again, I knew no one at all. So I had to get out of my comfort zone. And I literally went up to people and asked if they wanted to be my friend. No joke. And what's funny though is that we're still best friends to this day. Like, it's so funny. But yeah, everyone was super welcoming. And I was an international student, which is weird. And so a lot of my friends were German or French or Spanish, which is really, really cool. What I did find interesting though is I was never in the group with the Americans. I was one of 2 black women in my program. Yeah. No, I was the only one. Never mind. I was the only one, but there was another black man in my program. So that was always fun. And you know what? That didn't really impact my studies as it did here, which I thought was really great. If anything, a lot of people were really curious just about my experience here, because that was the same time Ferguson happened right before I left. And then during that time, I think that's when Tamir Rice was shot, when Charleston happened when I was gone. And that was surreal. Because I remember calling my sister and being like, it looks like a war zone over there. Like, is it really as bad as it looks? And she's like, yeah, it really is. And it's interesting because my master's thesis is talking about women that join militant organizations, and specifically Hamas and Black Panther Party. I read a lot of Black feminist literature, so I was already hyped up. I won't lie, I was really hyped up. The Feminist Society wanted to do a photo series just of different women on campus, and I got this shirt when I was on the Civil Rights Pilgrimage that says "Why I Vote," and there's lots of different scenes from the Civil Rights Movement in it. It's a pretty political shirt. And they asked if I wanted to do a photo. And we did. We went to the center, like the city center, and I did the Black Power fist.
Wow.
And the picture turned out awesome.
It's incredible.
So many people were staring at me like, what? And also, like, I was in the countryside. There were barely any people of color there. So yeah, I was,
Wow.
yeah, I think that was the most that was the most out there that I've put myself. But it was great. I had so much confidence during that time. Like, it was really, really, really great experience. And the fact that I could kind of infuse my experience just with my love of Middle East politics and history was awesome. It was so great. And also, I didn't know anyone else who was doing that, you know, so I felt like I was laying some type of foundation. So yeah, the entire experience was very fulfilling, and I'm gonna go back for sure. It's just a matter of when. But yeah, it was amazing.
Wonderful. And upon your return, you worked with the Latino Center for Leadership Development, correct?
I did. Yeah, it's funny because I didn't work for a few months after I moved back. Then I could not find a job. And when I actually started working with LCLD, it was an internship, an unpaid internship.
Wow.
So that humbled me real quick. And I was working with the director of special projects. But I did it like a job, and after about a month, it turned into a part-time gig, which I was really happy about. But what was great about that organization, it's more of like a leadership organization, and they have a leadership academy where they basically mentor a lot of young professionals who want to run for office. And so they had 4 weekend seminars throughout the year, and since I was the assistant of director of special projects, we coordinated all of that. So just the founder of the organization just was very well connected, had very high profile people come and lead these workshops. And even just the cohort of, they're not students, I guess fellows. The cohort of fellows were just an amazing group of people, and they were so down to earth. I couldn't believe it because they just accomplished so much. And so I was in awe basically the entire time. But that was also it was a really good experience, especially because everyone was a person of color. And they just did so well for themselves, and they were just really supportive of me as well whenever they asked what I wanted to do. So just the environment of it was just really great to be in, because it also kind of boosted up my confidence, because getting an unpaid gig after having a master's shouldn't happen, but that's the reality, you know. But I think it's what you make of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And will you tell us about your work now?
So I am the Senior Program Specialist of the McNair Scholars Program. I just changed my title. And the McNair Program is a federal TRIO program. And we serve a diverse population of students with the goal of helping students get into academia. But here we really focus on any type of graduate school path. And I work with 26 students, and it's great from all different backgrounds, disciplines. And because I just work with 26 students, I get to know everyone pretty well. And kind of the way I approach it is I want to know where you want to end up, and we work backwards in finding a graduate program that's going to help you get there. And especially with people of color, I think we're told more school, more school, more school, and the doors will open for you. And we don't have that luxury anymore. You know, some students don't need graduate school. Some students do, but maybe they need work experience beforehand. Some need to go in right after undergrad. It depends. And a lot of people of color don't know this, you know, and especially since school is so expensive, you rack up all this debt, you know, and it's a reality. And I try to be very candid about that, because no one told me. I just assumed, oh, this is just an investment. And yeah, it's an investment, but like, you take out loans and it sets you back, you know. So with this program, I really try to be really involved, but realistic, because I don't want to be at a disservice for students. You know, like I want them to know that it's going to be hard, and not everyone's going to tell you the truth. So you just need to be educated on what you want to do and kind of build that path for yourself. Yeah.
So would you say that SMU aided your professional career, or do you feel like that?
That it aided my professional
Aided
career?
your professional career, yes.
Yes, in that I was hired. I'll be completely honest. And I mean, giving me the experience to even be able to do a position like this, yes. In regards to how I'm doing my job, nah, not at all. I mean, my department is great, has a lot of support and just amazing leadership, but I don't associate it with any help from the university, which I know is not the best thing to say, but I'll be honest. Besides being able to fund students over the summer, that is something that's really great. In regards to support of the program, not quite. It's a goal of mine. It's a goal of mine for people at the top to see that a program like this exists. Because before, when I got here, it was the minority research program. So when you look at the undergraduate research report, all the other programs had the titles of different projects of students, like what school they went to, their mentors. You got to the McNair page, and it was a pie chart about the racial demographics and how many were low-income first gen, how many were underrepresented. That's it. I just thought that was ridiculous, you know, and so the fact that that can happen for so long means that these types of programs aren't a priority for the university, and I'm trying to help change that, but at the end of the day, it's the students that change it. And I really think it's through empowering them and believing in them. And then eventually people at the top will see. So, yeah, in ways SMU is helping, but a lot of it's happening on the ground.
I see. Thank you for your honesty.
Yeah, of course.
So overall, what does life look like for you now?
I mean, it looks pretty good. I'll be honest. I do think I'm fortunate to be able to do what I do, and I'm able to kind of lead the life that I want, which is great since I'm 26. So I know that I'm really fortunate, and to be honest, working with students has really been, I don't know, it's been really inspiring for me as well, just because like even whenever I advise students, there's certain things that like I realize as I'm talking, then I'm like, oh wait, that makes a lot of sense. But I think it's just because of the dialogue, you know, and just getting a variety of opinions. So I am planning to move back to the UK in the next couple years for sure. That's just something that I've always wanted to do. And again, I'm in a fortunate position where I can. But I will say, I just feel I feel fearless now. And I just spent a lot of my life just kind of waiting to be acknowledged by people. And when I wasn't acknowledged, then I somehow thought there was a reason. And yeah, now I don't have that barrier anymore. And that's very, very liberating. And sometimes I do have to remind myself just to take certain things with a grain of salt. But at the end of the day, I know that I can achieve what I want. And that's awesome. That's a really good feeling.
That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Do you have any regrets at all?
No, I really don't. Sometimes I wish I did something differently, but I also think you learn from every type of experience, even the not so good ones. I feel like it's really how you respond to certain events. If you would have asked me a year or two ago, I'd say yes, of course, loads of regrets. But now, yeah, I don't have any regrets at all. Just the fact that I'm able to be where I am right now, I know is an extreme privilege. And so I try to make the best of any type of situation.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Ms. Lowrey, is there anything at all you feel I may have missed, which you would like to further discuss?
I think because I'm aware of how critical I am of the university, but just something that I do want to mention, that it's because I know we can do better. And I've met amazing faculty and amazing students that are doing great things. They just don't have the platform for it. And so I really think it's important to be critical of something that you care about, just so you can see change, you know. So I don't want to come across as bitter, but I do want to be honest, you know. So I've been really candid,
And thank you
candid
for
with
that.
you today. So, but yeah, I stand by everything I said because I care about how this institution turns out. It's my alma mater, so hopefully it turns out good. So.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Thank you.